Hello, Retail Brew fans. Thank you for being here this evening. To kick us off, please join me in welcoming Jacob Donnelly, Morning Brew's General Manager of B2B.
Friday tries and gives to give everybody in the retail industry the information they need to make better decisions. And I hope tonight, with this event, we can do that again. We're going to be talking about our favorite topic, Gen Z. Before we kick off, I just want to thank Amazon Ads for making this event possible. Now, enough about me. I'd like to welcome Danielle Brown, Vice President of Marketing of Cookies and Crackers at Campbell Snacks, and Aaron Cabry, one of our Retail Brew reporters, to the stage.
Please welcome Danielle Brown of Campbell Snacks and Retail Brew's Aaron Cabry.
Hello? There we go. Thank you so much for the introduction, Jacob. And Danielle, we couldn't be more excited to have you to talk about some of our favorite topics, Gen Z, and also snacks, which happen to be two of your areas of expertise, perfectly enough. For the audience, note that we'll be taking questions at the end of the session, so start thinking of some things you would like to ask Danielle. So to get started, I think we're going to talk a little bit about goldfish. It's a snack that people mostly associate with as a kid's snack, but it's gained a pretty large audience, a large following among Gen Z. So was that kind of an intentional move by the brand, or is it one of those things where you've just kind of retained those customers who've been eating these since they were kids?
Well, I'm so glad you asked about goldfish, Aaron. So Campbell Snacks, which is the company that I work for that houses goldfish and many fantastic brands, we have a mission to connect people through the food they love. And who doesn't love themselves some goldfish? Am I right?
You're very right.
Thank you. We've got some goldfish fans in the house. Thank you. It's historically been a business that's been about mom and kid and really celebrating those moments, those kind of early childhood moments. And that's fantastic. And that strategy was a really important strategy for us as the brand was growing. But what gets you where you want to go, right? What got you where you are isn't really what's going to get you where you want to go. And we had dug into some of our research and realized that actually 40% of adult households are consuming goldfish. Like, they don't have kids in the house. They're bringing goldfish in, and we hadn't talked to them at all. So we said, okay, we've got to think a little bit differently about our product innovation, about our messaging, and about how we can speak to people that may think goldfish is just for kids when it really could be for them too. So it was a deliberate shift over the last couple of years for us to broaden our audience. Gen Z is a natural place for us to go. Not only are they a really, really big audience with incredible purchasing power, but they also grew up with us. Right? Mm-hmm. If you think about, we've been marketing to moms and kids for a couple decades now. Finn and Friends, right, is a campaign that spoke directly to kids, and we've been speaking to moms as well. And so when you think about this generation, they literally have grown up with us. So it was important for us to continue to find ways to engage with them. Gen Z is an interesting generation that it spans quite a wide range, right? If you're thinking 10 to 25, think about yourself as a 10-year-old, and then as an 18-year-old, and then as a 25-year-old. It's a very wide range, and so for us to be able to appeal to that range of consumers, we had to think about what kind of product strategy, what kind of marketing strategy was going to be able to reach them.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the innovation strategy. I'm interested because you guys have launched some pretty fun flavors recently. You had jalapeno poppers, you have a new Old Bay flavor. Like, what's been that innovation strategy for reaching Gen Z?
Did anybody try the Old Bay goldfish? You didn't? Okay, we have trays, right? There are trays? Okay, perhaps not right now. but perhaps afterwards you can try some of the new Old Bay Goldfish. It's been really exciting for us to, as we broaden the aperture for the consumer base, we can also think differently about what product experiences are going to be really appealing to them. When it comes to a brand that's beloved and that is known to be a kids brand, it was really important for us from a product strategy perspective to find partners that could help us expand our reach, and also flavors that would take us from kid to a little bit more grown up, with more grown-up palates. So you mentioned Old Bay Goldfish. That's our most recent limited edition launch. You might still be able to find it in stores, but what was cool about Old Bay Goldfish, we partnered with McCormick. We put that out on their direct-to-consumer site, and we sold out in 9 hours. A really awesome opportunity for us to bring our offline online and to be able to sell to consumers in that way. We also we launched Frank's Red Hot Goldfish. Did anybody see the Frank's Red Hot? Like, you didn't see it! Okay, so I'll have to go back to the team and see if we can bring it back for you. Is it Logan? Okay, Logan really wants the Frank's Red Hot Goldfish.
Make it happen.
I know some people. But the Frank's Red Hot Goldfish was really born out of a consumer insight. Social media, consumers were saying, where's my hot and spicy goldfish? I mean, hot and spicy is like the thing. It continues to be the thing. But when you're a brand for kids and younger kids, it doesn't really make sense as part of your portfolio strategy, right, and your innovation strategy. But as we broaden our aperture, we then are able to broaden our opportunities to reach this group. And what I'll say is there's no better partner than Frank's Red Hot, because you put that stuff, we're still a goldfish, on everything, right? But what an unexpected partner for us to bring and to reframe for older consumers what goldfish could be, and to tell younger Gen Z consumers, hey, like, we're still here for you, right? We're offering bigger, bolder flavors that are going to appeal to your more mature palates.
Does nostalgia play a part as well? I'm sure Gen Z still likes some of the classic flavors as well.
Definitely like some of the classic flavors. Cheddar being the most popular and the flavor blasted extra cheddar being the next most popular. What I'll say is, like, having grown up with the brand, Goldfish is really familiar. There's some safety, there's some security, there's some familiarity with a generation that, quite frankly, has grown up during a time that is not so safe and secure. So we've been building relationships with Gen Z consumers for quite some time, but we want to evolve with them so that we can continue to be a part of their lives. I think that it's important for us to make sure that we are evolving with our evolving consumer base, and that we're bringing them product experiences that harken back to what they loved, but doing it in a more grown-up way. So you still have that classic adorable fish shape, right? You still have, on some of our products, the eye and that smile. It's kind of smiling back at you, but with a flavor experience that isn't like what you had when you were a kid.
And I'm curious, what are some of the retail channels that you guys have found have been the most effective at reaching Gen Z, and kind of how do they differ from millennials and other demographics?
It's a really good question, and I think it's hard for bigger companies to pivot, right? It's really hard for us, but what I'll say is that I was surprised to learn that Gen Z actually, more than other generations, prefers an in-store experience. That's not to say that's about half of Gen Zers, so it's not to say that they're not shopping online, and online is a really, really important channel for them. But what it means that us as a company, we have to think differently about how we're integrating the online and the offline. Our company's recently reorganized our sales organization. We used to have like an e-commerce group over here, and you have a shopper group over there, and like sometimes they talk to each other and sometimes they don't, and what's going on? I see some nods, right? That doesn't work for this generation, right? You gotta make sure that you're delivering a connected experience online and offline. And so we've brought that group together, right? There's no e-commerce, it's just commerce. That's like old news, right? Yeah, everybody's like, yeah, that's old news. But structurally, to be able to create an organization that's addressing the online and the offline environment in a seamless way for these consumers is really important to make sure you're reaching them moving forward.
So are a lot of Gen Zers buying their goldfish online?
That's a really excellent question. We've got quite a mix, right, of online and offline shopping. I think it's really interesting when you look at some of the trends, the buying behaviors when it comes to social, right, and TikTok being a place where people are buying a lot of stuff. I was just reading an article about, what was it, the 50 most, maybe somebody in the audience can quote this better than I can, but it was like the 50 most popular items that have been took off from TikTok that people then see there, go buy. Of course then I went to TikTok and looked at some of these products, and then I went to comment scroll, right? The things that we do, we're all consumers too, right, of these channels, and the things that we do, that's what Gen Zers are doing too. We have a Gen Zer in the audience, Justin. There you are. Hi, Justin. Right, Justin can confirm that. But I think the really important thing to remember is that we have to be where consumers are and where they're buying. Social is a really important space for us to be. We got to be in store too, right? To be where they are.
Well, you mentioned TikTok, and we truly cannot talk about Gen Z without talking about TikTok and Instagram as well. But so what have been your tactics for reaching Gen Z on social media platforms, like TikTok primarily and also Instagram?
So TikTok is really fun. It is. And it's clearly really fun for Gen Z as well. We knew when we were broadening our audience and when we wanted to kind of, when we were embarking on this new strategy, we needed to make sure that we were in the spaces and places where our consumers were. And TikTok was a natural fit. We were looking at, again, broadening our reach, and our brilliant agency partners came up with the Go for the Handful campaign. Not sure if you all have seen it, but if you haven't, get to YouTube and check it out. We partnered with two really playful, awesome friends in the basketball community, Bobby and Toby. And we challenged them, right, to hold as many goldfish as they could in a handful. We know that, and if you have goldfish in your home, which I know many of you do, it's impossible not to go for the handful, right? It's a consumer behavior that we knew already existed, and so why not amplify that with people that have the biggest hands? Basketball players, right? It's kind of like, why didn't we think of that before? And Boban has the biggest hands in basketball, and so we partnered with TikTok. We created a Go for the Handful TikTok challenge. Boban, I don't know if you've already seen it, don't shout it out, but if anybody knows how many goldfish Boban can hold in one handful. Guesses? 25. Whoa, he's got the biggest hands in basketball. These are little fish. 96, 250, keep going. 301. Now, how many of you are thinking about going to the store, buying a bag of goldfish, and seeing if you can beat Boban? That's the idea, right? Being in the space and the places where your consumers are, connecting with them authentically, some culturally relevant content, and creating an engagement opportunity. We partnered with influencers that year as well. And actually, that campaign led us to be a 2021 TikTok culture driver, which when goldfish, thank you. I mean, a year earlier, goldfish was a staple for moms and kids, and then the next year, TikTok is honoring the brand for some really breakthrough marketing. So we're really excited about the journey we're on, and expect to continue on platforms like TikTok. Instagram is another platform we spent quite a bit on as well, just understanding that TikTok and Instagram are two of the more popular channels for this generation.
I feel like Gen Z is all about authenticity. So how do you kind of keep that brand voice from being a little too cheesy, for lack of a better word?
I'm so glad you asked. We actually leaned into cheesy with our latest innovation. Our Megabytes are bigger, bolder, and cheesier, and they're the reboot of the original Goldfish. But I think it's important to listen to consumers. And you're absolutely right. Authenticity is incredibly, incredibly important to this generation. don't want to be marketed to. They want to be understood. And so we're thinking like marketers, but we're also trying to think like content creators, but also connectors, right? I told you at the top of this, our purpose is to connect people through food they love. We can do that in social media channels, and we can do that as long as we're acting authentically. The cool thing about Gen Z is they're gonna call you out. You'll know, right? And what's also cool is that we've got some cred with them, right? And so they know us, they trust us, and if we run astray, like we'll learn that, and we'll continue to evolve with them. But I think it's a really excellent point that you bring up, like knowing your place, knowing kind of who you are and how they see your brand, and then how you can authentically extend that to meet their needs is really important. If I can give you a little example. I don't know if anybody tried the jalapeno popper limited edition goldfish. We need to get in your news feeds, people. We only have one Gen Zer in the, maybe we have a couple others, but. This was last fall, right? We have this incredible innovation. And also last fall, and it's still going on a little, but it was the height of like 90s nostalgia, right? And jalapeno popper, maybe some of you kind of savvy restaurateur folks may know, but the jalapeno popper was actually introduced in the 90s. It was a very big bar snack in the 90s, still an awesome snack to this day. And we also have seen a rise of 90s fashion, 90s nostalgia, 90s fashion. And what says 90s more than Jenko jeans? Am I right? They're having a comeback. I know, you couldn't believe it. It was so, mind-blowing. You just knock over our drinks. But no, so what's cool about this is not only we're tapping into culture, but it's actually like a very slim microcosm, right, of the culture that was kind of into Jenko jeans at the time. We partnered with Jenko because they are not only the 90s nostalgia jeans that everyone knows and loves, but their pockets happen to fit an entire bag of goldfish. That's kind of why they were designed. And so we were able to partner with them, create one-of-a-kind Jenko jeans, which were really expensive, and people bought them. It was a way to tap into 90s nostalgia. It was a way to tap into culture, and it was a way for us to, and we connected with those consumers via Instagram. So it was really cool for us to embark on that partnership and connect with the Gen Z consumers in a different way.
And besides, scrolling through TikTok and creeping through comments, what has kind of been your strategy for analyzing the trends and interests of Gen Z and kind of figuring out the best way to reach them?
Yeah, I think we invest quite a bit in understanding who our consumers are. We do primary research. We also work with our research partners to make sure that we're understanding the preferences and the attitudes of our consumers. I think the really important thing for us is making sure that we are continuing to innovate, right, to bring new to this consumer. They are looking for new experiences, and their attention spans, right, are fleeting. They've grown up in a world of a ton of choice. And so it's important for us to continue to seek out, not only from them directly, but also from secondary sources, how we can best engage with them.
Have you noticed any, standout values or preferences from Gen Z that kind of inform their snack choices?
Well, Piper Sandler, right, earlier this year, came out with their favorite snack brands of teens. And Goldfish was the #1 favorite snack brand of teens. When you look at that list, you see other salty snack brands not to be mentioned, but when you see the list, there are some really big names, and it's important that we recognize our role in that. That consumers are they're making those choices every single day, and I think we're really pleased that teens are excited by our brand, but we also are needing to continue to innovate to remain relevant to them.
kind of going off of that, what have you found are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have met in trying to reach Gen Z?
So I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but they span such a wide range in terms of their age and life stage that reaching them may look a little bit different depending on if you're talking on the younger end or the lower end, and that can be a challenge. It can also be a really huge opportunity. I think because these consumers are not afraid to try new things, are very variety seeking, it can be a challenge to hold their attention. We, from a Goldfish perspective, are really fortunate that we've built that base with them. But I think if you're trying to engage these consumers, you need to authentically show up, right, and make sure that you are continuing to build that relationship with them. I think it can be a challenge to break in, but once you're there, right, hanging on and continuing to find the best ways to reach them, even though they span quite a wide range. I mean, half of Gen Zers, like, they're not even working, right? They're at home with their parents, and they have, what is it, $143 billion of like spending power, and yet they're not even working yet. Like, how are you reaching them? Where are you finding them, right? That's both a challenge and an opportunity, and it's one that we're thinking about as we move forward on the brand.
Nice. Now we have a few minutes for some audience questions, so anybody has any questions for Danielle, definitely let us know. We'll grab you a mic. If you can just let us know your name and company before you ask the question, that'd be awesome.
Hey there, Kevin Kwan. I'm currently at Verizon. Curious to know if you have, from Gen Z or any of your other demographics, insights as to desires for things along like sustainability trends from a product or even a packaging standpoint. And if so, what can you share in Campbell's response to?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think the sustainability, purpose, right? We said this earlier, but being really transparent and authentic is increasingly important to this generation, and I'd say even to a kind of a broader swath. We're constantly looking at opportunities to up our game in that respect. To make sure that, just recently we were approved for our Goldfish packaging to be 100% recyclable, which is a really, really important move forward for us. That's on the sustainability front. I mean, from a purpose-driven perspective, there's also just an incredible number of brands that are tapping into their purpose, right? At Campbell's, our purpose is to connect people through the food that they love, and so it's important that we're staying true to that. But I think to answer your question really pointedly, sustainability is important and becoming increasingly important. Purpose is important and increasingly important. And so transparency, authenticity with this group is going to go a long way. Thanks for the question.
Hi, I'm Jack from Unity. Do you ever compete against other Campbell's brands? And if so, do you leverage each other's customer networks or whatnot? How do you navigate that?
We're one family of brands. I have the distinct pleasure of running the cookie cracker group. We have a salty group and a bakery group, and the salty snacks tend to, they are kind of salty. No. But no, we definitely do overlap, and we share insights, right? We share insights. I mean, I think, generations are multifaceted, and snacking occasions are multifaceted. I think marketing to one generation, if we've got a couple other brands that are Gen Z focused, but they have a different brand attitude, they have a different spin, and they're for different occasions. And so while you could call us competitors, I like to think that we're kind of frenemies, because we definitely want to share those insights. We want to make sure that we're distinctive from each other so that we're growing the business together.
I think that's all the time we have for questions, but thank you guys, and thank you for joining us today, Danielle, and chatting about Gen Z and snacks.
Thank you so much for having me.
Please give a warm welcome to Morning Consult's Claire Tassin and Retail Brew's Glenda Toma.
Hey, Claire. Good to see you, Glenda. Hello, everyone. Claire, we're excited to chat about all things Gen Z, obviously, just continuing with the theme of the night. And by the way, for the audience, we will have a few minutes for audience questions at the end. But to start, maybe we'll again continue with the food theme that we've been seeing already. I know Morning Consult has the list of most loved brands by Gen Z, and it really seems just dominated by these snack and food brands. And I guess to start, what are these companies doing right that's really getting the attention of Gen Z?
Absolutely. So just this morning, Morning Consult released our most trusted brands report for 2022, and snacks and restaurants were very, very popular with Gen Z. Tostitos made it onto their top 10 most trusted brands. But when you look at the key themes that these brands are really getting right with Gen Z, they are absolutely connecting, as we've heard from the other speakers today, with what they care about, with what they're paying attention to. You're seeing a lot of the social engagement with them, but it's not just, snack brands that are doing this well. We're seeing brands like CVS are doing really well with Gen Z, and I've seen a lot of growth there as well. And I think that's just ensuring that they're connecting with the customer across all those channels that we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, I think another standout, to me at least, was Dollar Tree. What are they getting? How is Gen Z kind of fitting in there?
Absolutely. So in the Gen Z's most trusted retail list, we saw both Dollar Tree and Family Dollar made it into their top 10 most trusted brands. And when you think about who Gen Z is, where they're shopping, we know there's a lot of price sensitivity within that generation. So, a lot of them, as we heard earlier, not working yet, still kind of starting out on the career front, so that's part of it. But there's also a sense of, I'm going to get the best bang for my buck. A lot of what drives their purchasing is value, like everyone, and those are brands that are also speaking to the ability to get something easy and fun.
Awesome. And then I guess on the flip side, what do retailers kind of get wrong about Gen Z at the end of the day? What do they think that they want, but they actually don't?
I think when I see brands get Gen Z wrong, we're trying to put them in a box and say that they are this completely different, brand new animal that we've never seen before, right? When I look at what drives Gen Z's purchasing behavior in our own studies that we do at Morning Consult, we see that the same things that drive everyone else is, like I mentioned, good value for your dollar, being trustworthy in terms of having good customer service. These are all things that matter way more to Gen Z than things like sustainability. And sustainability absolutely matters to Gen Z. It matters to Gen Z more than any other generation. But I think where we tend to see brands misstepping is when we think that they only care about one thing, is when we kind of think about them as the young activist generation and forget that we've still got to win them on the basics and on the table stakes.
Yeah, they seem kind of like a study in contrast, right? You think about how much Gen Z cares about sustainability, right? But then oftentimes Shein is on one of their favorite brands. So how does a retail kind of navigate that dichotomy?
Sure, I think it's important to remember that, yes, Gen Z cares more about sustainability than any other generation. And yeah, they shop at Shein more than any other generation, which is absolutely not necessarily intuitive, but I think we all contain multitudes, and Gen Z cares more about getting a good deal, oftentimes. And they also know, they're a very aware generation, that that larger companies are going to have a much greater impact on climate change than individual decision making. So they might make a sustainable decision at lunch and maybe shop on Shein in the afternoon. And again, we all contain multitudes and can do both.
And see if it evens out.
Exactly. They're balancing it out somewhere.
And I guess, what would you say then are kind of the habits that really define the Gen Z shopper? Obviously, there's some on the younger end that we can't really speak to. It's
harder
probably
to
their
survey
parents.
the kids, yes.
Yeah, shopping habits. But are are they as obsessed with TikTok as we all have like talked about today?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're always online. I think when it comes to shopping specifically, though, you see that online-offline blend more so than any other generation. So they love to shop in stores. They look more like Xers than they do millennials in terms of their channel preferences. But you also see more of that shifting back and forth. So Gen Z, and we heard this earlier, is they do generally prefer to shop in stores, but they're also least likely to have a preference overall, meaning that they don't necessarily see as much differentiation between all of the channels that they have to tap in to connect with different brands. So they'll catch us on TikTok, they'll come to our websites, and if we do have a physical presence, they'll come there too, which means they can be really hard to keep up with.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the mall dives that everyone talks about are just still coming back.
Absolutely.
And I guess, how important is it for a retailer right now to really attract Gen Z, like, off the bat? Because obviously they're just going to be growing in terms of spending power. So why is it important to get them on board now?
I think earning their trust early as they are just forming these habits, especially for the cohort that's coming out of school and starting their careers and kind of starting to develop these patterns that we typically will see last a bit longer than the latest TikTok, trend or video or something along those lines. So getting folks early, as we all know, certainly helps to build those long-term relationships with our customers. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to also, as we've heard earlier, continue to reinvent ourselves to stay relevant with this cohort. So what's hard about Gen Z is you can win their loyalty, but they'll also, you kind of have to keep earning it over and over and over again because they're going to keep reevaluating you. They're going to keep holding you accountable to how you won them in the first place.
Yeah, I think at one point you mentioned that they're kind of the most fickle generation. Can you speak to why that is? Just because they contain so many multitudes, or is it something specific to Gen Z?
I think what makes Gen Z so fickle is that they grew up, they've never known a world where they didn't have every option in the world at their fingertips, right? They're the first truly digital native generation. So if you are not attracting them or not winning them over in the moment, they've got another browser tab open right behind yours, or they're going to flip to the next TikTok video. And if you don't catch them, you don't catch them. So their attention is so fleeting because of that. That's what makes it hard.
And if you could give a retailer, I guess, or a brand one piece of advice, like this is the one thing that they need to do in order to earn Gen Z's trust, what would be at the top of your list?
Well, I work for a research company, so I'm going to have to say do more research with them. Absolutely. But that is important, right? Because when I do research on Gen Z and sustainability, not every Gen Z behaves the same. We know that, again, those who are entering adulthood behave a bit differently than current students do, than teens do. So I think, again, I'll go back to my earlier point that we cannot paint them with one broad brush, and we need to make sure that we are understanding their needs in our category, how that translates across our similar categories as well. We need to be cautious that we're not just saying, okay, we need the Gen Z fix, and we're going to do a marketing campaign, and then Gen Z is going to love us, and then we're done. Right? That's not how it works. It's never how it's worked. But I think we just have this tendency to kind of look at Gen Z as this mystical, new generation. I was mentioning earlier, I used to cover millennials for work, and no one has asked me about a millennial in at least 5 years. But it was the same story then too, where we were kind of saying okay, they're this totally new thing, and we got to figure them out. And it turns out there's a lot of segmentation within each generation too.
Yeah, well, actually, let me ask you about millennials then.
First time in 5 years, I might be a little rusty.
No, but what's the biggest difference then between Gen Z and the millennial cohort, if they're more like Gen X at this point?
Yeah, well, so I want to be clear. Gen Z is specifically more like Gen X in terms of their shopping channel, their online, offline shopping preferences. That might be the most they have in common, though. And I'm going to say this as a representative of the millennial generation. I think that having gone through sort of going through these formative events in our lives at sort of different critical periods, millennials are a little bit more jaded, and they also tend to in terms of retail, they're much more online friendly. They're much more likely to shop online than a Gen Zer is, and pretty much the way you win a millennial is convenience. They're pretty skeptical about brand values. Gen Z's skeptical, but they want to hold you account. Millennials are just kind of going to let it go by, and the sort of convenience elements, millennials are most likely to use like omni-channel delivery services, for example. That's just anything about just making it fast and easy is what's going to win over a millennial, versus Gen Z will still have time to go to the store and hang out with you a little bit more.
So how does a retailer kind of navigate just not only winning over Gen Z, but then not alienating the rest of their audience?
Again, I think it's really important to remember that we do have more in common with Gen Z than we have different in terms of those core purchase drivers, right? So getting value for dollar right, ensuring that we're serving our customers well, that we're fulfilling our brand promise. That's the most important thing for all of our customers. And then beyond that, it's just making sure we're reaching them where they are, and that is going to look a little bit different for Gen Z than it will older cohorts.
Got it. And I guess another quick question before I kind of maybe turn it over to a few audience questions. There's been a ton of trends that Gen Z has brought back. I have a particular favorite, but I wanted to get a sense of what's yours.
Well, as an elder millennial, it's the 90s fashion. It's seeing them maybe learn from their elders and maybe not make the same mistakes or as many of the same mistakes as we did. I'm not seeing quite as much of the jeans that drag in the mud and get all ripped up around the hem, but I think they're doing the 90s and they're making it a little cuter than at least I did when I was in high school. So I'm going to applaud them for that.
No, very fair. And I mean, for me, I think the bucket hat can't go wrong with a bucket
Oh,
hat.
absolutely.
I'm surprised I haven't seen any here
I
today.
will say,
Right?
my dad's birthday was yesterday, and he's
Happy belated.
retired in his 70s and asked me for a bucket hat for his birthday, and I got him one, and he looks great. So anyone can wear a bucket hat.
That's the power of Gen Z.
Exactly. They're
really just bringing
influencing
everything.
retirees at this point. I love it.
Amazing. I know we have a few more minutes, but I guess I wanted to see if there were any audience questions to begin with. Maybe. Oh, I see one over there.
Hi, Christopher from Takasago Fragrance and Flavors. Thank you first for calling Gen X and Gen Z similar, because I actually think Gen Z is sort of Gen X Junior. But would it be fair to say that the days of instant gratification, are those kind of waning a little bit in terms of how Gen Z looks at the world, and are they willing to wait a little bit longer so customers can do their research into their interests and habits, or are they still on the market where they want to walk in the store and get exactly what they want right at that moment?
I'm still seeing a lot of demand for the instant gratification. They can move through that process pretty quickly. If you're in a store environment, they're on their phone at the same time, so they're able to grab the information that they need, and they're excellent researchers in that regard. So I think the priority is more ensuring that we're prioritizing information that they're looking for, so we can make sure they do have that literally at their fingertips at the moment of decision, which is a tall order.
Would you say that's being as transparent as possible in terms of sustainability, or just making sure that their price points are just out and...
Absolutely. So if the tough thing with Gen Z is if we're going to win them over on something like sustainability, we've got to be able to show our work and back up those claims. And if they bust us on it, you're absolutely going to hear about it. So ensuring that transparency is definitely the way to go from the forefront, rather than a lot of times with sustainability, you'll see these kind of very vague commitments that are hard to back up with numbers and maybe hard to have proof points for. There's no real time for that with this generation. You've got to really show your work.
Got it. Another potential question from the audience?
Hi, I'm Maya with Hotwire. I just had kind of a twofold question. When you look at generational brand trust, what is trust kind of defined as? And then how does Gen Z's definition of trust differ from, say, like millennials?
It's a fantastic question. Thank you. So again, the kind of top line drivers of trust are pretty consistent across generations. A couple things that spike for Gen Z more so than other generations, but again, these are not nearly as strong as some of the table stakes things that we'll see, like delivering on our, doing what we said we were going to do, having good customer service, like things like that. Like those are really, really important. So you can't let, they do hold us to account for sustainability. Sustainability does have a stronger impact on brand trust for Gen Z than it does other generations, but it's just diminished against something like good value for your dollar. Other things that matter more for Gen Z, I think, also speak to some of their purchasing behaviors. Ratings and reviews are stronger trust drivers for Gen Z than any other generation, as well as sort of that reachability and high quality customer service. And I think that speaks to the breadth of channels where they might expect a service response, which again can be tough for us to meet them where they are. But those are some of the things that make Gen Z stand out against other generations. So some of those attributes are just not as important for older generations as they are for Gen Z.
Got it. I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, how's it going? Curious if you feel like brands are educated enough on their audiences, or are they still looking to their partners for education on Gen Z and millennials, or are they investing within their own companies on enough research? Where are they looking for this information?
I don't want to paint every brand with the same brush in this regard. A lot of the brands that I get to work with are looking for help outside of their own walls. I think a lot of times when it's very easy to focus on your own differentiators and your own competitors and maybe lose the forest for the trees a little bit. And I think that's where external partners can really be helpful in helping you not just see how your brand is stacking up against, your direct competitors, looking at your own shopper data. That's all really important, and it's great that we have that at our fingertips internally often. What's hard is being able to see that in context and see how trends are moving over time across your sector within this generation. I think that's where external partners can be really valuable.
Great.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's all the time that we have today, actually. Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you so much to... Thank you also to Erin and Danielle for bringing us into the world of Gen Z. And thank you again to our sponsor, Amazon Ads, for making this event possible. And last but not least, thank you to all of you and your great questions. One quick thing before I let you guys go. Can't end this event without mentioning the Retail Summit, the SKU, in October. So that'll be an all-day event, October 25th, right here in New York City. We have some leading brands like Crocs, TikTok, as we've talked about today, Kroger that'll be joining us. So it'll be a fun day of conversations and connections. But yeah, I think that wraps up today's Retail Brew the checkout. And I hear the bar will be open for a little bit longer. But thank you all again, and I'll see you guys in the newsletter at least.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.